listen to what she's saying. She speaks about Mountain Dew. Or they recognize that? I just recognize that, but that's illegal. All right, everybody. So the private sector organization of Trinidad and Tobago is advancing a number of initiatives aimed at strengthening business, shaping public policy, and driving economic growth. So PSOTT Chief Executive Officer Rudolph Hanamji joins us to discuss the organization's 6-month progress report, plans to develop a national SME growth roadmap, and efforts to expand trade and investment opportunities between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. Rudolph, it's always good to see and speak with you. Thank you very much for coming.
Good morning to you and all our viewers and listeners. Thank you for having us.
Of course. So here's what now. From what I've read there, it's a number of weighty issues that your organization has taken on. And let's talk about this report, this 6-month report. What can you tell us about it? What have you found?
Marlon, I must start by saying the private sector organization of Trinidad and Tobago, as the name suggests, is fully established and funded by the private sector. This is not a new idea. As a matter of fact, some of Jamaica's economic transformation, and even now in Guyana, is as a result of their versions of this type of entity, which have been around since the 70s and 80s, respectively. So, in the last 6 months, I have, as the incoming CEO, I must commend the efforts of the board, the executive team. You would have spoken to my predecessor, Kelvin Mahabir, a few weeks ago. Because in that short space of time, being launched in December, it was important to put an emphasis on building trust. We must understand that Trinidad and Tobago's economy built itself in pieces and fragments over time because we were a maturing society, right? We've just touched the cusp of over 60 years of independence. So over time, as industries blossomed and grew, different representative bodies would have been formed to seek the interests of those.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've not had the level of integration and coalitions amongst the private sector that is required to form a cohesive policy on investment and social enterprise. So in the last 6 months, our board, I must say, is made up of the TTMA, the TTCSI, the TNT Chamber, the Confederation of Regional Chambers, the Siparia Chamber, the Chaguanas Chamber, the Energy Chamber, and our chairman, Richard Lewis, and deputy chairman, Mr. Amjad Ali. They have actually been able to encourage, for the first time, the broadest coalition of private sector institutions in Trinidad and Tobago's history. We now, in that 6-month period, represent over 500 institutions directly or indirectly. And I met yesterday with the SME Business Council, which has been one of our implementation committees. And that is why this national SME roadmap, growth roadmap, is of critical importance to us.
Yeah. All right. So, Rudolph, what is it? Let me ask it this way, because I want everyone to understand what has happened with your organization. What, in that 6-month period, are you most proud of? And what change has happened in that 6 months?
Interestingly, one of our other board members, the American Chamber of Commerce, had this conference in the last week.
Yes.
Right? It's a technology-focused conference, but the issues of public policy featured, as it must. Mm-hmm. And private sector players sometimes jest that they don't like to get involved in politics. But policy and politics have the same etymology. Mm-hmm. Politics, the original meaning, politicos, is the business of the people. And the CEO, Nirad Tiwari, made the point that with the right public policy, and he called upon the Minister of Public Admin and AI, Minister Smith, who was there, as well as Dr. Dowlat, who came on the second day, to speak to public policy and the importance of getting it right, especially in this era. That is what we are most proud of, because for the last 6 months, Marlon, after this interview, I am headed to the Ministry of Trade, because every Friday for 3+ hours, for the first time, the private sector sits, as we are, across the table from the technocrats in those ministries and public agencies, and effectively builds public policy in real time. This is a new innovative model where the state has agreed that we cannot develop policy and then after the fact translate that and expect the private sector to adopt it. It creates barriers.
So there's a connection.
A real, genuine connection. We don't always agree, and that is important.
Yes.
However, we found ways to mitigate conflict and to build broad-based consensus. And our organization is not competing or replacing the existing associations.
Of course.
They will always have their nuanced perspectives. However, they have all agreed to build national consensus around issues such as economic transformation and public policy development that supports an enabling ecosystem for the private sector.
What does all of this mean for the business sector? And more specifically, the SMEs, medium-sized businesses, because I think that sometimes, Rudolph, that when business organizations, they have these types of discussions and so on, but there's a feeling from the SMEs and the medium-sized enterprises that these talks are not for us, or we are not included, or we are too small to even be included or to have a voice. What does it mean for these businesses, the smaller businesses?
I brought some data with me.
Right.
And for the younger kids out there, the word data is plural. I don't like to get these facts wrong,
right,
because the context is important in answering your question. Marlon, as a country, you know, you always start your programs with beautiful calypsos.
Yeah.
The Gypsy sang about the sinking ship. But Sniper reminded us that some people look through a bar, the bars of a cell, and they see mud, while others look up and see stars. Right now, we are facing some mud. We are 30,000, I'm averaging, 30,000 barrels down in oil production. We're down 1.3 billion cubic feet natural gas. We're down 100 cargoes of LNG. We're down 1,600 rig days. Our real GDP has dropped from 187 billion to 155 billion. Again, I'm paraphrasing figures. What does that mean? That the SMEs in particular are less insulated. They don't have the reach, the deep pockets, the savings, the retained earnings that other companies have. So unless as a private, and when I use the word private sector, we mean everyone from the fisher folk, the double vendors, the mechanics, the supermarkets, and you continue, the media houses, the taxi drivers. If we don't get public policy right, if they don't get more activated and involved in not just PSOTT, but their respective associations, and influence public policy in the right way, this type of economic decline can either continue or our economy will stagnate, because the best advisors tell us, with the oil and gas finds projected in 2027, particularly gas, our economy is simply going to be maintained where it is, Marlon. And if we want to look at the stars and vision a better Trinidad and Tobago, we need to find hundreds of millions, billions of dollars to invest in education, healthcare, agriculture, to feed ourselves. So where does that money come from, Marlon? It cannot, for any longer period, be expected to simply come from the energy space. The other SMEs have to grow and expand and create a broader pie, as Kelvin had said to you a few weeks ago, that the entire economy expands.
Yeah, and I'm sure that this is what has formed a large part of the discussions with the government when you have your meetings with the minister and the ministry.
Well, interestingly, I don't believe in coincidences. Our current Minister of Trade, Investment and Tourism comes from the private sector, having built a globally successful firm himself from the ground up. And there are many success stories. You would notice I'm wearing a steel pan pin on my chest. In innovation philosophy, when I lecture, I always use our steel pan as the world's greatest symbol of innovation.
Yes.
Imagine someone looks in the mud and sees a rusty oil drum and can convert that into the world's best musical instrument. Trinidad and Tobago has given that to the world for free, but we've also given our other best assets, which is our human capital. Again, at different conferences, you hear of Trinidad and Tobago citizens building companies like Google and NASA. We have that talent right here. What we need, and the Ministry of Trade and the other ministries, the entire administration has committed to developing human capital and allowing the private sector to play its rightful role in influencing public policy so we can unlock that potential.
Speak about the workshop roadshow.
From mid-July into mid-August, we are partnering with the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers and their member chambers in places such as Grande, Couva, Chaguanas, Tobago, Point Fortin, San Fernando, to host workshops. So these are not lecture series where persons speak to each other and then you shake hands and say goodbye. Mm-hmm. In real time, we'll be defining projects that we will collate and present to the Minister of Finance in preparation for the national budget, which will look at short, medium, and long-term solutions to ignite the SME space, give them the enabling ecosystem that they require, and at the same time complement the activity that is happening in the larger areas of business. Yeah. So that will just visit our website, PSOTT.CEO, or call us at 25PSOTT or WhatsApp us. The information will be going out next week on social media. We're partnering with the Ministry of Trade as well and other private sector entities. Mm-hmm. And part of that, Marlon, is a segue to the Guyana trade conversation.
Right.
Because the SMEs in particular are very interested in how we can collaborate with their counterparts in Guyana. President Ali has made a public call when he visited Trinidad a few months ago for that type of partnership, and we are working directly with our counterpart, the Private Sector Commission of Guyana, in removing non-tariff barriers, for example,
yes,
between our two countries, but also looking at technology and energy services investments and other SME opportunities.
Yeah, and you speak about possibly creating a managed investment fund for cross-border projects.
So, across the region, in Jamaica, for example, there are real-life proof points where the private sector has decided to invest its capital that is sitting in our commercial banking ecosystem and elsewhere into funds that actively fuel new investments for diversification in the manufacturing space, tourism, and other SME groups, mm-hmm, where capital is sometimes the biggest barrier to access because of how SMEs are sometimes structured and the types of businesses that they're involved in. And there needs to be a joint Guyana-Trinidad fund to ensure that there's mutual investment on both sides of our nations. And at the same time, on Monday, you would have reported earlier that the Prime Minister is heading to CARICOM, heads of
yes,
government meeting. Our chairman, Richard Lewis, will also be there, and we will be discussing some of the trade areas, the tariff issues, but also where can we collaborate more effectively at a private sector level. And Mr. Warner, the head of the CARICOM private sector organization, has also made a call for private sector bodies like ourselves to become more integrated and active across the region so that from the private sector side, regional integration can finally take its space and develop into what we need it to be.
Yeah. Rudolph, I just have a few minutes again. Excuse me. Anything else you'd like to place on the table before you leave us this morning?
We can do this, Marlon. Every sole trader, consultant, doublesman, fisher folk, manufacturer, conglomerate is one player of a greater ecosystem of the private sector. We have a moment in time to influence public policy. Let us collaborate, let us build trust, and let us believe in the excellence of Trinidad and Tobago. And together we can change this narrative. And in quick order, in the short to medium term, we can transform our economy, Marlon, and create a better generation, a better state of affairs for this generation and those to come.
Yeah. What do you see for your organization And what do you see as some of the things that you'd like to achieve? We are already, I believe, into the 7th month for the year. We just, we do have the budget coming up in maybe September, October, whatever month. And then you have the end of the year. What would you like to see your organization achieve over
in the
this
energy
next few
services
months?
space? Through our Energy Services Committee, for example, we want to see the enforcement of our current local business or local content policies, so that energy services personnel can travel more easily into the energy triangle. As we mentioned earlier, we want to influence public policy leading into the budget. We also want to ensure that more members of the private sector community, they return to active participation. We want to also, leading up to closer to the end of the year, we want to implement an ease of doing business tracker, because we also have an ease of doing business committee, and all of our committees have representation from the public sector as well. And that will be critical, because if before the end of this year we can continue to improve the ease of doing business, which we have already with the ministry through, for example, the Sale Clear program, then going into 2027, in addition to the gas fines that will be coming on stream, we will have an upsurge in SME and other private sector enterprise, and people will invest, and we will also attract foreign direct investment and local reinvestment, because we're working very closely with Global TT to ensure that that capital is also reinvested in our country. So those are the markers we've set for ourselves, and we can do some of that in the next 5 months.
All right. Again, just to remind us, how can people get in contact with the organization?
25 PSOTT, PSOTT.co, and we are live on all social media platforms.
Right.
Feel free to contact us. Register today. We have a member's fee for the half of the year that is very affordable. And if you're already a member of an existing private sector organization, you can benefit from that fee. So retain your membership with your other associations, but also join us and any other representative associations out there. Please make contact with us. We need one integrated voice to build a better working Trinidad and Tobago.
I guess there's strength in numbers, Rudolph.
There is.
Yeah, and again, very weighty issues that the organization has undertaken, and we wish you and the organization all success, because I think that if you all are successful, well then
we are
it
all
will redound.
Lifts all tides, and we will be back. We're open to being held accountable, so have us back anytime to report on what is happening with our country through private sector enabled public policy.
Yeah, Rudolph, always good to see and
Same
speak
here.
with you. Thank you very much for taking the time to come to our studio this morning. Yeah. All right, everybody, we must go to a very short break, but we do have this image for you. Serene Mayaro from Esiba Small, and we also have a traffic update for you from El Socorro. So all is well on the nation's highways and byways this morning. We're coming back, everybody.